I'm Ed Rabyd, otherwise known as the Rabyd Atheist, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like. The purpose of this channel is in regard to education, in regard to atheist and deconversion issues, and Bible theology, philosophy, politics, and whatever else I seem to come up with in relationship to those issues. Once a week, I'm going to try to have more of a deconversion issue video that's more specifically geared to the various issues that are involved in deconversion. And one of the things that I think really happens in deconversion is you begin to get rid of the self-righteous pride. And, the title of this video is going to have something to do with that self-righteous pride. I'm just not sure of yet as of this recording what it's going to be. But the issue for me in this is, as a Christian, there was a lot of things that I felt I knew for sure. And because I knew for sure that these things were true, I also went forward with them and basically acted like I knew something that I couldn't know. Now, just as a review, for those of you that might be new to the channel, my view on faith is that faith is a dishonest position. You claim to know something, or you claim to understand something, or you claim to possess something by faith, even though you have no evidence for it. In that respect, I agree with Iron Ra that it's a dishonest position. It really is lying to yourself. Okay, it's self-deceptive and can be deceptive of others. Every day as a preacher every Sunday that I would step into the pulpit, I made some fairly grandiose claims about my future, about the future of people that believed in Jesus, about the future of everybody. I make claims about the here and now, that if you lived a godly life and you believe these things and you follow these things, this is the way and the path that you would go forward. And making a lot of claims about things that I couldn't know for sure, if I really thought about it. And of course, I deconverted this, which the reason for many of it is I started thinking about it. And I began to realize how I must have looked to other people, because as somebody who engaged in theology, who had some pretty good biblical knowledge and was always trying to be a good apologist, I ended up probably being annoying to a lot of people, because I would often get into debates with either agnostics, atheists, freethinker types as a theist. And I would make certain claims about Jesus or God that now in retrospect I realize why I couldn't prove them at the time, but I sure as hell thought I did. See, because I had this idea that I had this relationship with somebody who was imaginary. And because I had that relationship, it was on that relationship that I could say that I was on the right path, I was doing the right thing, and I had, some self-righteousness there. And I don't know that people of faith can really escape self-righteousness. I know that, Jesus condemned it in the Gospels, where he talked about the self-righteous Pharisees and condemned it and condemned certain religious practices and so forth as self-righteous. But isn't it inherently self-righteous to think you've found it? Isn't it inherently self-righteous to think that you have the truth, that you have some sort of special knowledge, that you are the one that's truly looking at the Bible in a certain way, and therefore you have the better interpretation and everybody else is just wrong? Over the years, this year or so, moving into my second year of this channel, I have had several people that were Christians come on here for whatever reasons to debate me on some sort of Bible passage, to tell me I was just straight up wrong about something, or try to convert me. When I did my Jehovah Witnesses series, I ended up getting a few Jehovah Witnesses on here trying to get me to see the true light of their religion. And every one of them kind of runs into me as a buzzsaw at that point. Now, I want to clarify my attitude, because I think a lot of people that come here on this channel and see me kind of go at some of these people from time to time. A lot of times I don't care and I just let them comment, but every once in a while a comment will catch my eye, and I'm going to tell you the reason. Because it's me speaking to myself as I used to be. And what I mean by that is they say things that as a Christian I used to say in response to the things. And I now recognize some of that for what it is. It's basing your beliefs on something you can't possibly know, or a real hubris that because you have the truth and because you have Jesus or you have whatever truth there is, therefore you can look at anybody who doesn't possess that truth as somehow lesser or lacking. And it's that selfish, righteous type attitude that is displayed, I think, in everybody with faith. Now, a lot of people may yell at me for that. Some of the best and most humble people are faithful. Yeah, in a lot of ways, I would concur with that, except when it comes to faith itself. When they sit there and say, yeah, I know Jesus was a real person. Yeah, I know God's real. And I come up to them as an atheist now and say, well, prove that. And they go, it's a funny thing to hear what happens when you ask people for proof or ask people for a good argument. They eventually fall back on some sort of special pleading or special knowledge or some sort of experience or whatever, the many arguments for the existence of God. And I don't find them convincing, and I point out that, and then they get, some withdraw with peace. It really depends on the person. I'm not saying that these people aren't good. I think all of us have an inherent self-righteousness, or, Dawkins called it the selfish gene. Ayn Rand, called it the virtue of selfishness. There's this aspect to us that we take care of ourselves and we look out for ourselves, and that's not always necessarily a bad thing. But religion seems to hype this up a few notches, because not only do we take after our own self-interests, we also begin to look at others who don't believe as we do, who don't think as we do. And at the time when I was a Christian, I did this a lot without realizing it. I wasn't being belligerent. I wasn't being a meanie. But I would see somebody comment something. And I said, well, and I would go after them with what I thought was a good argument. Now I look back at it and go, yeah, that's a problem. And it's kind of changed my attitude as a deconverted person, because the one thing I do try to avoid now is, being kind of a self-righteous jerk. As an atheist, the only real tenet that I hold is that the evidence is not convincing to believe that there's any kind of God or deity. I'm certain that the God of the Bible, particularly the Old and New Testaments of the Protestant Bible that I used to use on every Sunday, he does not exist. And quite frankly, he's a piece of shit. Okay. His plan really doesn't work all that well. I understand that part of it. But what I'm trying to avoid sometimes as an atheist or as just a human being, because I'm an atheist and because I realize there is no such thing as, say, a special knowledge that I can possess, and because I don't think I've found the truth, and because I don't know all these other things that I used to know of faith, because I realize that knowledge and education is more of a process other than, it's not going to the smorgasbord of truth and grabbing smorgasbords of truth, different pieces of it. It is more, to me now, a process where I become more knowledgeable, I become more understanding, I become something else. And this is the real deconversion issue. Now, I'm not going to go out there and say that atheists are more humble or don't necessarily have the same problems. I know many self-righteous atheists who come out there and they just get in theists' face and make their life miserable. It's one of the reasons I was turned off to atheism when I first realized I didn't believe in Christianity. It's why I stayed a deist for a while, because I figured they were more neutral and safer. But then I found a few deists that were belligerent. And that's kind of the way humanity is. No matter what group of people you look at, there's always assholes. And so, and atheists are no exception. But I think what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to say when it comes to deconversion is this, that what I'm now looking for is a kind of working toward a humility of heart that says, I don't have any special knowledge. I don't have any way of looking at things differently. I don't have a magic bullet to end grief. I don't have a magic anything. And when you get rid of magic out of your life and a belief in magic, you begin to realize that you have to go forward with your own thoughts, thinking for yourself. And this changes the game in a lot of areas. Morality is a big one. Once I realized I was an atheist, I just didn't have any rational reason I didn't have any rational reason to hate a lot of people that I used to hate as a Christian. As a Christian, there's almost this, venom towards the LGBTQ community. There's venom towards other religions. There's venom towards atheists. And, there's this thing called sin, which is really an imaginary concept that the Bible writers came up with in order to make people feel guilty for being human beings. And in that guilt, you can manipulate a lot of people when you say God says. And, I don't have that anymore. I don't have this desire necessarily always to prove that I'm right. What I do have a desire for is finding, the truth that allows me to live life a little bit better, and this real life, not an imagined one, and, a heaven that doesn't exist. And this has changed my attitude whenever I approach a discussion or even a debate, that I can be wrong about certain aspects of that debate, but I'm going to hold my position and fight for it, because I think if I can steelman my own position as much as possible, and somebody can still convince me that there's parts of it or all of it that's wrong, then I can look at it and say, well, maybe I was wrong. This is not something you can do on certain things as a Christian. If somebody convinces you, for instance, that, that certain events of the Bible are untrue and they're key events to salvation and life in Christ and so on and so forth, even if the other person gives a fantastic argument about how what you believe about the Bible or Jesus or God or whatever is untrue, you can't jump off of that because of doctrinal statements. You can't jump off of that because, God's word says. If you read the Bible and you decide that some story, like, say, Noah's flood and Noah's ark, there's just no way it could have happened, which, by the way, there's no way that could have happened. When you look at something like that and say, man, I am a fundamentalist Christian and Noah's ark is just nonsense. There's just no way that can be true. You either have to find some nonsensical way to keep holding on to either some sort of allegorical meaning or whatever. I don't have to do that anymore. And I am really, really glad for that. If my viewpoint gets challenged and I really feel that somebody's challenged it well, then I'm pretty good with that. I think, one of the things that has sparked this thought in my head is I've had a couple of recent discussions with some theists, and I get angry about certain things that people try to defend using scripture. As some of you may know, I can't remember, a couple months ago, I went at a guy who wanted to justify slavery, and I just said, slavery is a moral evil. There is nothing in nature or in life that says it's proper for one human being to own another human being. To me, that's complete and utter bullshit, and I don't need God to tell me that. I can just realize that if I was in that position, I wouldn't want to be a slave. Empathy says, sorry, no slavery. I feel the same way about genocide. And more recently, I had a discussion with somebody about child sacrifice. And to me, all those things, forget the context, forget the story arc of the character that tries to do them, forget all that bullshit. Those three things in and of themselves are irrational and immoral to me. And people say, well, what do atheists have basis of morality? Well, because all of those things undercut the survival of the species. They certainly undercut our prosperity. Slavery is a very terrible way to bring about prosperity to the maximum number of people. It only really benefits the slave owners. Genocide doesn't benefit the race because you're engaged in tribalism that just causes you to go kill a group of people just because you don't like them or don't believe the same thing that they do. Child sacrifice, killing somebody else's or your own protege. How does that lead to survival and prosperity? None of this stuff benefits mankind in a single way. And yet the Bible tries to justify all three. And then when somebody comes on and tries to justify the Bible on these issues, I get a little angry. But at the same time, there's a little empathy, because a lot of the times I hear the same arguments that I used to make. And now I realize what complete and utter bullshit they are. And sometimes my anger isn't directed at the person or their argument. Sometimes my anger comes from within. Ed, you used to do this shit, and now you realize it's bullshit. And so, sometimes you gotta jack it up and back it up, because sometimes, you can see yourself. And how would you have responded if some atheist had gotten on your case? It's why I don't allow name calling around here. I don't allow personal attacks, and I try very much to model that myself. And the reason I do that is I don't, think that that's productive. I just have never thought it's productive. It's why I don't like political correctness, the woke crowd, and a bunch of other people. It's why on the conservative side of the aisle, I don't like their version of political correctness or their own woke crowd from a conservative point of view, because I don't feel that those things are productive. I don't think name calling in any way, shape, or form, even so-called scholarly name calling, is justified. It's just not reasonable to me. And so often I'll talk about, Christians in general, if this is what you have to believe, this is what you have to say. And I try to talk back to a person what they told me and put it in my own words to say, this is what I'm hearing. Is this correct? And this is a lot more productive, because I realize that being a compassionate anti-theist means showing compassion. And that means even for my adversaries. And so for those of you that argued with me over the last year and a half, or fought with me, or even some of you that got banned from my channel because you were engaged in personal attacks, my empathy is with you. I feel sorry for you that you have to take such a dishonest position as faith and justify it. But I'm not attacking you. I'm attacking your dishonest position. I want to thank you for stopping by. I want to thank you for listening to me and being around. I also appreciate every like, share, subscribe, every time you hit that notification bell for more content. Everything that you do as viewers of this channel that does any of those things that I just mentioned, commenting below, gets that video noticed, and that helps me build the channel. The growth in the last couple of months has been just phenomenal from what I started from. And I want to thank all the new subscribers as well. Thank you for being there. You also can follow me on Facebook. It's a great way on occasion to get messages. And it's also a good way to personally message me instead of using YouTube comment section. If you think something is a little bit more personal and you want to address it, then that's fine too. I try to respond as quickly as I can, but I'm a busy man. I want to thank you once again for stopping by. I appreciate you all being here. And, hopefully someday I can convince you to be a rabid atheist like myself. In the meantime, this is Ed Rabyd, also known as the Rabid Atheist, signing off and wishing you a good day.